Hey guys, so we have a breakdown video between Jake and Scott. They're going to be starting standing, so there's going to be a lot of wrestling in this video, just like these two. We're going to be leaving the guard pulling to another video because there is nothing more satisfying than when you finally do get that takedown, right? So let's get right into the video. Okay, shaking hands, getting right into it here. Bit of hand fighting, looking for that inside control. Jake with a good left collar tie. So 3 different ways of how to deal with that collar tie. Hold the elbow, change your levels, in a good stance. You can shoot in, you can get that action reaction, that push and pull to duck underneath your opponent, or simply just moving away from their collar tie with your hand on the bicep. Scott doing a good job of controlling that wrist, but still dealing with that collar tie. So Jake with a collar tie and Scott with an over tie with his right arm. So let's go over a couple of things you can do in this situation. You cleared it then. Okay, so if you have the momentum going forward, you can trip your partner's lead leg or their far leg. This is similar, but it's actually from an underhook with that action reaction. And this is usually what happens if you don't get the momentum going forward. It is quite difficult to actually sweep your opponent's legs. And same thing here, it's kind of a bit of a stalemate. So you see, go ahead and reach over the top and then miss his opportunity to shoot. It looks amazing when you get the timing of this one though. Usually what I do in this situation, this is personal preference. Okay, I have that over tie. I start to get a little bit of movement and then from there I cross post so I can sneak under and go for the single leg. You can obviously go for the opposite leg, maybe a double leg, switch off to the waist. But just one thing to keep in mind, if your partner does have that inside control, they're controlling the other wrist, it is always going to be easier for them to switch off to underhooks because they do have that inside control. So yeah, a lot of information right there. But anyway, for now, let's get right back into the match. So, fighting for collar tie position, looking for that inside control. It's really important to stay in a strong stance in this position. Jake pushing and pulling to dig in almost an underhook. All right, Scott going for the leg, although he had to deal with that collar tie. So get around those barriers before you consider shooting in and trying to take your opponent down. Okay, so similar thing as before, but he actually did get it that time. So pushing and pulling to dig in those underhooks, and obviously he had his hands together. It makes your life a lot easier. Okay, so some defensive options. Sometimes as their hips are in, you can pull your opponent out of position as you buckle their stance and take them down to the mat, but more than likely that's going to happen where they lose their grip and then you can get your underhook yourself, let alone a collar tie. These ones are when the hands aren't even together and they're backing out, so it's slightly different and you can see going for that outside reap. And yes, if you can reap outside, of course you can always reap inside. It depends on your opponent's stance and your stance. There's 2 examples. A head arm throw, which is quite risky in Jiu Jitsu. Obviously, if you stuff this one up, you're going to get your back taken. But I hate to say that this is wishful thinking, but if your opponent does have their hands together in a good body lock, they're initiating the takedown, more than likely you're probably going to go for a ride and end up like this. Okay, jumping straight back into it. So Scott on his side in his half guard. It looks like Jake is digging in his arm to go for what we call a Japanese necktie, where you're in that gable grip, that palm to palm, or maybe even a Das choke. But Scott does a good job of rolling on his back and prying Jake's grip open. It does look like Scott was trying to go to turtle position, but that arm around the neck actually prevented him from moving into turtle position. Jake progressing from his knee ride into mount, which you would be getting awarded points for. But then again, he didn't establish it long enough and he sunk in the hooks. So you would be getting 4 points for this position as well in most jiu-jitsu competitions. My best advice is roll out of this position and then work on clearing those handles. So let's go over some options. So I'm clearing the handles, switching my hips so I can step over that leg, and I'm putting my head to the opposite side of the choking side, getting rid of those connections. Here I ended up on my back. More than likely, if you get rid of that connection from your back off your opponent's chest and you're getting rid of those handles that they may have, you've got a good chance of putting your back on the ground, ending up in guard. If they don't do anything, sometimes you can turn into their guard. Expect your partner to try and go up to mount. So there are threats, obviously, of them moving into, say, an arm triangle, depending on which side you go to, if it's the overhook side or the underhook side. Honestly, myself, I try not to hang out in turtle position too long when my opponent has the hooks in. I'm carrying their weight, my own weight. Obviously, there's a threat of the choke as well, and also getting flattened out. So if you do clear those handles, you do have options of moving towards your opponent's guard. Sometimes with this example here, he cleared the handles on one side of the body and he was able to end up on top with his guard. And here's another example as well. Obviously, there's no connection whatsoever between the chest and the back, and she was able to scramble to turn in. Okay, back into the stand-up battle, trying to fight for inside control. And that over tie again, you can see Scott is controlling Jake's left wrist, and he has good head position here. He's actually got, well, momentarily had both wrists. Anytime you've got good head position and you're controlling the wrist on the same side, you've got a great opportunity to go for an arm drag. Good collar tie. It's really important to stay in a good stance. So it looked like Jake tried to get a left underhook, but Scott had a good frame to create a little bit of space. And here we have a great example by Jake, the arm drag I was just mentioning. Straight to the back, into a body lock, and elevating Scott. For those of you who haven't rolled with Jake, he's incredibly athletic. Okay, so as soon as you hit the ground, you do have an opportunity to work on prying the grip open, moving your hips away from your opponent, and obviously turning towards your opponent as soon as you possibly can. You have as many tools as they do. You can hook the outside or sometimes the inside if you feel like you're getting elevated mid-air, but this may result in you getting taken down unless you drop back down, and then you can work on breaking the grip.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so a very similar position to before. Jake's got the hooks in, trying to work for the choke. This is not a moment to relax. Scramble as much as you can, get rid of those hooks. I feel, yeah, this is more than likely the thing that is going to happen. You're going to get flattened out. They're going to be working for the choke. Scott does a good job here of turning and getting rid of the hooks. In this position, you do have an opportunity to work for half guard out of side mount. You've got to be very careful of your arm. And there we go, caught in a straight armbar. So when it comes to a straight armbar, along with a lot of other submissions and controls, movement is everything. They're trying to take away the space, they're trying to bridge in the center, they're trying to control the wrist, pull the elbow over the hip, get that upper body control. So movement is absolutely everything. Scramble as much as you possibly can. I would probably suggest going for a hitchhiker escape where you're turning your thumb up and your palm down to your opponent. But believe me, I feel your pain. Okay, back into the stand-up battle. Similar position to before. Scott's got that over tie and wrist control. And switch to the inside. And what goes around comes around. Nice arm drag by Scott. Trying to buckle the legs of Jake. Very nice. Nice takedown. Okay, I would suggest maybe switching the seat belt. That will stop you from falling over in that position. And similar position to before, defending the choke as Jake's on top. Scott does a good job of defending the choke, and you'll see him roll onto his back in this position before he gets flattened out. So wrist control is everything, trying to keep that inside control, defending the choke, keeping the chin down, shrugging the shoulders, and starting to move his hips out. You can see that Jake is on his way to go to mount, and momentarily in guard. And the gift wrap that Jake has is going to make it incredibly difficult now for Scott to turn towards him. But we're coming very close to the end of the roll. Looks like he's working for maybe, say, an Americana. Maybe we could go for an arm triangle. Back into a side mount position. And there we go. That's the end of the roll. Okay, so feeling a little frustrated, not sure of where to go from here. If you want to upgrade these skills, I did make a list. The biggest takeaways from this match right here. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the biggest takeaways, we're going to start with back control escapes. So first of all, roll on your back out of turtle position to relieve the pressure. Second of all, keep your chin down, shrug your shoulders, and always defend your neck. Third, look to clear your opponent's handles, such as wrist control, along with their hooks. Fourth, get rid of the connection of your opponent's chest off your back, then ideally turn to your guard or their guard. Okay, moving on to armbar defenses. Keep your arms bent in a figure 4 and focus on getting your elbow out. Second, look to relieve the pressure off your upper body. If the grip does break, look for your hitchhiker escape. Third, momentum is everything when it comes to submission defenses. The same goes for controls and pins. And the stand-up wrestling. Number 1, maintain a strong stance with good head position, always try to cut angles. Second, clear your opponent's underhooks and collar ties. And third, ideally fight for inside control before attempting a takedown. If you can't go inside, look to move around your opponent's barriers.